Hey there, it is Tomster here on behalf of Indie Structural Productions once again, continuing onwards with the Throwback Baritone build series. So, starting off, we're just gonna start putting in some of the hardware already. So, putting in the tuners, fairly straightforward, basic. Not gonna align them just yet, but putting them in place for the future. Or I should say, putting them roughly in place already in preparations for final assembly. Now in this video, however, we're going to concentrate on getting the scale length marked out, so that means putting in the bridge, and also making the nut. So all things to do with scale length and actual playability of sorts. Now, this is a baritone. I decided to make this a 28-inch baritone. So I'm getting my trusty ruler here to mark out where exactly that lands. So making sure on both sides of the neck that I mark out 28 inches. There we are. Now to make sure that I actually get my bridge position correct, I need to make sure that it aligns, or that it lines up with the neck. So that just means that I draw on where the neck kind of lands. Which then makes it easier for me to figure out where the actual center is. So I'm just going to check that right here with this Incra protractor, which is one hell of a tool. If you can get one of these for yourself, I really strongly recommend it. Yeah, seems like there wasn't all that much adjustment to be done. Marked out my center line, which is slightly off from the center line of the top. And the center line at the top being where the book match point is. So the joint, in other words. Making doubly sure that my scale length is exactly where I want it to be. All looks good. And making sure, again, that my center line is correct as well. Now, I'm using a Tune-o-matic bridge for this, which is a bit different. The way that I usually line up a Tune-o-matic is so that the base side is 3mm offset, so further back from the nominal scale length position. And then the treble side is 1mm back from the nominal scale length. Now, nominal scale length is, what I mean by that is the actual scale length. So from the nut all the way to the bridge, meaning the full 28 inches, that would be my nominal. And then the bridge position is 3mm back on the base side and 1mm back on the treble side from that 28 inches. Now, trying to line up everything perfectly. So center of the bridge and on the center line, and then the pegs where I marked out the offset. Using a bradawl, I'll mark those positions out. Doubly sure that they are exactly where they need to be, and making those bradawl points a little bit deeper. Next up is checking my depth. So very easy way of doing it, just checking the size of the tuning peg, or not tuning peg, bridge peg thing, and using a Sharpie to mark it out on my drill bit. Not necessarily what you need to do. Some people use masking tape. I don't do that because the masking tape has a tendency of getting all the excess wood getting stuck into it and then moving, and it's just Sharpie doesn't move because it's on the actual drill bit itself. Makes life a little bit easier because I don't have a pillar drill. There we are. So these are pilot holes for, of course you could use a brad point, perfectly fine to do that. I didn't in this instance because this bit was a lot sharper than my brad point equivalent, and just meant that I had to be that much more careful when starting out the hole. But I had no issues whatsoever. And the same thing with the 12 mil drill bit. Starting off slow, just make sure that the bit doesn't wander anywhere. Making sure that I'm getting it nice and straight. All four holes drilled. Man, that was a hard sentence. All the holes drilled, I then make the hole for the ground wire. So using a brad point and then a 3 mil bit to drill through into the pickup cavity. I could drill straight into the control cavity as well, but the pickup cavity is much closer, so I don't need to worry about the drill hitting the top of the guitar. Now putting in the wire is a very straightforward process. It's just more poking it through, making sure that the bare wire is then angled up so it actually doesn't move anywhere, in preparation for putting in the bridge pegs, like so. There we go. And I'm using just a rubber mallet with some denser rubber or harder rubber side to push these through, which means that I don't damage the metal parts at all if I were to use a metal hammer or a steel hammer or anything like that. Of course, you can use a wood block and any hammer or mallet of your choosing, but I like using this mallet in particular. With the bridge in place, it's time to remove all the masking tape left over from polishing the frets and actually oil the fretboard. I don't need to do this at this point, but I just figured I might as well oil the fretboard right about now. And for this guitar in particular, I am using the Crimson Guitars fretboard restorative. Just slathering it on there and letting it sit for a while before rubbing it off and buffing it up. Now, time to start making the nut. So first things first, gotta check what size cavity I have to fill. Look, a dog. And seeing how much material I need to actually remove from this block of aluminium. Yes, aluminium, because I got told off quite a bit at Crimson for saying aluminum, because it's not bloody aluminum, it's spelled aluminium, so it's pronounced aluminium. I'm really sorry for that absolutely horrible attempt at an English accent, but yeah. There we are. And of course, measuring out the width of the nut as well. Cutting it out with a jeweler's saw. I could use a hacksaw for this, just as fine, but I had the jeweler's saw in handy with a really good blade, so why not use it? And then this tabletop is as flat as anything I could find anywhere else in the apartment. I could use a leveling beam for this as well, but it is a bigger surface, so a lot easier. So just using 150 grit sandpaper to level out the faces of the nut. Of course, I have to go and constantly check the size of it and make sure that it is square, so I don't change any of those crucial elements. And there you can see that I marked out with a pencil just to see my progress, that I am actually taking away the right amount of material. Then using a single cut, really nice file to start taking down all the excess material from the top of the nut. Making sure that everything is still square, because that is something that is absolutely crucial. The nut has to be square with the fretboard. This is just me marking out the final dimensions with a scalpel blade, because a pencil would leave too thick of a mark. So now I have the edges of the nut marked out, and then using a half cut pencil I mark out where the tops of my frets are, which gives me the bottom to my nut slots. First things first, squaring off and filing off the ends so I get the right dimension. A really nice single cut file will do really well and get this job done very quickly. And then it's about getting that radius absolutely correctly. You don't have to do it, but it is a lot nicer looking and a hell of a lot nicer feel to the nut as well when it's rounded to the same radius as your fretboard. Now from each edge I go 3.5 millimeter inwards. This gives me the bass string and the high E string. In this case, the low B and the high B, because it is baritone after all. And from there, I can work out the string spacing. Now this is before I got my string spacing rule from Stu Mac. So I'm having to string up the guitar and then work out the string spacing this way. If you're careful enough and keep on measuring and measuring and measuring over and over again, this should be a breeze. You just need to be very precise about it. You can take out a protractor and work out the distances between, the strings themselves, you can do it by eye if you have a really good and trained eye to do it. But yeah, this is definitely one way of doing it. I much prefer using a string spacing ruler because then I know that I have everything accurately done, and I don't need to do this part at all. I can do it all on my bench vise. Alright, so then it's working out the string spacing and marking them out with a scalpel blade. With that done, it's time to move on to cutting the nut slots. Now this is also before I got my Hosco nut slotting files, which are amazing. So I'm using the Crimson Guitars old nut slotting multi-tool, which had some issues, and as you can see, I've had to fix it because it broke quite a few many times. This isn't even the original handle. The original handle also broke a long time ago. And before this process, I have also, I think this is after I've gone and sharpened all the blades by hand as well, because they had dulled down pretty quick. They're more small saws than files, really, but they get the job done. Unfortunately, aluminum is a fairly soft material. Then once those are cut, I move on to shaping the nut so it actually feels comfortable to the hand. So getting rid of all of the sharp corners and edges, making it look really nice and smooth and rounded over, because that's what you want. But most importantly, it's about making it feel good to your hand so that when you're playing, you don't hit a sharp corner and then hurt your hand in some way. Now, I didn't do the final depth for the nut slots just yet because I want to get it in place and have the neck and the string tension and everything set for a little while. So then when I go back to do the final setup, I can do the final setup as is because the guitar has had time to kind of settle a little bit more. But sanding it down and getting it nicely polished up is also very important. I'll also do the final polish once I do the final setup. So now it's a matter of getting it in place. I just had a drop of super glue and the strings are kind of helping it stay down, and I'm using the softer side of my brass fretting hammer to kind of tap it into place a little bit better. But hey, this video is starting to reach its end, so I would like to thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Remember to subscribe, comment down below, and hit that like button so that I can make more of these videos. Alrighty, see you guys. Bye.